with the storms that move through, and that weakens, definitely weakens the root system, so it doesn't take nearly the amount of wind, which instead of snapping the trees off, a lot of times it'll just fold them over, just like it did, and just pull the root system up, and yeah.
And that's what we are seeing in a lot of these pictures. We want to get back to Gus Rosendale again. You have new information for us.
Yeah, a couple updates from Minneapolis officials. The first one, that there is this issue of gas leaks in the area, so they're asking first and foremost if for anyone to, if they smell gas, to call 911, report that, and get out of the area. Obviously, a lot of people have lost their homes today, and they do not have a place to stay tonight, and help is on the way for them at this point. A shelter for people is being set up at the Northeast Armory, that's just east of Broadway and Central. Now again, getting around is a big issue for everybody here. Here's how they're going to get folks to this shelter at the Northeast Armory, that's east of Broadway and Central. Shelter buses are going to be, shuttle buses, I should say, will pick people up at the 4th Police Precinct at 1926 Plymouth Avenue North. You know, we talked about the damage, but let's talk about the people. This amount of damage to homes leaves a lot of people literally without a roof over their heads tonight. And so help for them on the way with a shelter there at Northeast Armory. And again, emergency calls we're being asked to pass along to you should continue to go to 911. The dispatcher is still able to handle that. And again, the reminder that anyone who is not an emergency member of the first response to stay clear of the scene, because getting around continues to be a huge issue here.
All right, thanks, Gus. Looking live from Chopper 5 right now, you can see kind of that white in the center of your screen. And Dave, that's what you had described as, that's the path, because the leaves are out now. You can see the trees are green.
Correct. And that's where the leaves have been stripped or the trees are down. And it's just a clear indication of where that path is. And now Ken said that it made it up to about the river, and that's where it stopped. And, you know, another interesting thing, Ken, are you able to talk?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
You know how as it gets to the north end, and I see this happen a lot, they're left-turning tornadoes. It looks like it curves off to the left as it approaches the river. Is that clear, or is that, maybe it's my imagination? It almost...
No, that's not your imagination, Dave. I was kind of seeing that from a distance, and that's exactly what it looked like. You know, you could tell that the leaves have been stripped of the trees, so it becomes kind of evident when you see the white paint from the sides of homes being more apparent from miles off. It does arc a little bit to the left. It tends to follow something that I've noticed down through the years, and I've always wanted somebody to explain it to me, but I haven't found anybody who does. is that every time a tornado of this magnitude intercepts blacktop or concrete, like a highway system, it seems to deviate. As long as it doesn't deviate so much from the main body of the storm, it tends to pick up the path of the road. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here, is when it hit 94, it decided to follow it to the left. I've seen that in tornadoes in rural areas where it goes cross country. And you've noticed from Chopper 5 when we've reported storm damage of farms being clobbered, you go, well, how could that possibly be when they're spread so far apart? The tornado picks up the road. That's where the farm homes are built, and it just clobbers them as it goes along. I'm seeing a little bit of evidence of this as well. Back to you, Dave.
Yeah, Ken, it's one of those things that you know, it's hard to pick up on and hard to get enough data to say, okay, it's doing it because of this. And on a day like this, when it was cloudy, you know, I could see maybe on a hot day that it would have had some kind of altering pattern. But, you know, it's hard, and I almost think that it might be something more of the terrain that's doing it, and the fact that the road becomes less of a friction area. You know, when it's doing this kind of damage, it's creating a tremendous amount of friction on the ground. Once it hits the road, it doesn't have that friction anymore, and that may cause it to turn to the left, because the effect of the spin, I don't want to get into a whole bunch of mathematics and physics here, but the effects of the spin may seek that lower amount of friction and then actually travel along the road.
Okay.
That's the best answer. Ken's eyes are glazed over right now. But
well, yeah. You know, it actually makes more sense now that we explain it that way when you take into the spin of the tornado. But it's just, Dave, I've seen this so many times over the years that when it picks up a road, that's where it wants to go. And it makes sense. It's picking the path of least resistance. That really helps my understanding.
Absolutely. That's what it's doing.
Ken, can you guess for us how many homes, businesses are we talking in this potentially 3.5-mile path of destruction here? Are we talking hundreds?
Hundreds. Hundreds. Easily hundreds.
Easily.
You're hard to talk to these people here. You know that there are people down there who are going through their stuff right now and trying to see what they've got left over. And it's good to hear that we've got shelters set up. But Ken, you can see that. Lots of people just out walking around the neighborhoods here.
They are. I mean, I think most of them were a bit caught off guard as to the severity of the damage that they sustained. And many of them are groups of neighbors talking to each other. I think what they're trying to do is pool their resources and help each other out. And one of the things we did notice is that it looks like Lowry is open now. It's slow and go. They are directing traffic through it, but at least we have one main road where you can actually cross the damage path from east to west now. But people are wandering around all over, and I just don't think they know where to start. Quite frankly.
I think you're exactly right. Looking at it from up above, you get that bird's eye view of just the extent of the damage down there. And we had seen at one location where they had multiple, and you counted them, I know it was several ambulances stationed at one place because they can't get through.
That is correct. And some of them have been either left or have been dispatched. There's only half as many in the staging area as there were before. That might be an indication that there's fewer calls than they expected and they're paring down the resources required, or that we may find out later that there were injuries. I find it hard to believe with the extent of this, the damage I'm looking at, that no one is really hurt severely.
You know, we're about 2 hours into our storm coverage now, but that's very early considering the emergency crews are going to be out there all night tonight, and this cleanup is going to be going on for days, weeks, probably months even. So the reports are going to continue to come in as we're learning much more about how hard this tornado hit this neighborhood.
We have Tim Chernow, who is on the ground, and he was talking earlier about these are unconfirmed reports, but they were just hearing countless reports of people not being able to get out, calls for help of some sort or another. So he was saying that he was hearing crews were literally having to walk into these neighborhoods and walk into these homes and check on people or check on the call because they can't get their vehicles in there. So again, he's hearing some reports of injuries, but we haven't been able to really substantiate anything like that, and we haven't really been able to hear anything extensive. We haven't heard anything extensive, which at this point is good news.
We want to take a live look now. We've got 27th and Morgan Avenue North. We have a live look in that area. Just looking at these pictures from above, it looks like every single house in this path was touched in a major or a minor way. A live look on the ground, and there's another example of just a huge mature tree in that neighborhood just snapped right over. It almost looks like this tree was just ripped off, laying in the neighborhood. And there's again another example of people out. I'm sure people in these neighborhoods shocked to walk out of their front door and walk around and see that it wasn't just their house, but it was their neighbor's house and next door to that house as well. And these people who are in the neighborhood are probably right now trying to figure out what they're going to do to get things cleaned up and waiting for some folks to get in there and help them out. One of the big issues, Jess, we've been talking about is how these roads are all blocked off and emergency crews are having a hard time getting in. Another big concern is gas leaks. They've reported several, and they're warning people if they smell gas, that's something they want to know about right away, so call that in.
Absolutely, and the number to call, of course, is 911 if you smell something, of course, if you need any emergency assistance. Other than that, if you don't live in North Minneapolis, police are demanding that you stay away because they absolutely can't deal with all the gawkers heading into that area when you have the extent of the damage that you have there.
We have had many viewers sending us pictures of the damage. Pics@kstp.com. PICS is where to send those pictures. I was doing that on my way in, driving in, taking some pictures along the way, stopping and taking some video. It's just absolutely incredible to see the extent of this damage.
Look at that. That looks like a tree actually on top of a roof. Another live look from Chopper 5. Captain Ken Melchior has been flying over North Minneapolis for What's it been? An hour now, at least, Ken, that you've been up there?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half. And you're talking hundreds of homes damaged. Any destroyed?
Yes, there's been a few of them that are flattened. The walls were blown out. The roof came straight down. Some of them where the roof is missing, along with two of the walls, and there's only two side walls that are still standing. As far as the strength, I'm getting a chance to reassess some of this now. Most of the area in here is an older neighborhood, and they're all wood structures, and it's the wood structures that really got clobbered, the older wood structures that got hit. That's where you're seeing most of the debris, all of the bare wood. The brick structures, they sustained the damage a little bit better, so yeah, I'm still going with an EF2. Anything that looked as though it was EF3 was very small and localized, so I'm still standing by the prediction that National Weather Service is going to come out with an EF2 on this one. Back to you.
Yeah, Ken, and that's the case in this neighborhood. You're talking about some of the older structures. This is a well-established neighborhood. Mature trees, older homes. They're huge trees that got knocked over, and you're talking about the wooden structures. That's the majority of the structures of this area.
Yeah, some of these trees that got knocked down were ancient. They were very old, very large. But as Dave had stated earlier, with all the heavy rainfall and it softened the soil, it didn't take as much energy for that tornado to, instead of snapping the tree off, it just uprooted it. And in a case like this, in a heavy residential area, that's worse. It's pulling the whole tree and throwing it right into the homes next to it instead of breaking it and folding it over in the area where it's at. It's becoming a very large missile. Back to you.
All right, Ken Melchior live in Chopper 5 for us tonight. We want to get back down on the ground now. Tim Chernow is in Minneapolis. He's on the ground at 15th and Upton Avenue North. And Tim, our producer, was just telling us that you're saying you're describing this as the worst tornado damage you've ever seen, and you've been covering news here in the Twin Cities for what, 20 years now?
This is the worst damage I've seen from this, particularly the house that we're going to show you video of. We've seen a lot of homes with trees that have fallen on top of them, and the home has sustained substantial damage. But if you're looking at the pictures that I sent back, that house is completely destroyed. There's nothing left of it. A large tree fell on it, and the house is just completely flattened and crumbled. And the house across the street also has a large tree on it. We spoke a short while ago with the woman who lives in the house. She told us that she had just arrived home after the damage, but her husband was inside. She says that he was trying to scramble out a lower window. She said the glass broke. It drove him back into the house. She said that that's when the worst of the damage hit. And if you can imagine what it would be like to crawl out of that house alive, that man is very lucky to have survived this. He did escape, and she said she'd already spoken with him, so we know that he's somewhere in the area. But this is the worst we've seen so far. This home, this particular section, this house is destroyed. And I'll tell you that to get to where we are right now, we had to climb over and under and go around in yards and over fences, probably 10 trees at least, to get to where we are. It's an obstacle course. And as I'm speaking to, I'm looking at firemen who are in the air doing welfare checks, but they're on foot because, again, the neighborhood is impassable.
Yeah, Tim, what are you seeing that? You said the firefighters are doing welfare checks. Are you noticing them going door to door and checking on each individual home? How are they doing that?
We've been hearing calls that they've had distress calls, and I think they've moved to the area in a grid. So I believe that most of the calls that they've come in, that they've addressed. But then there's a concern of gas leaks as well as, for example, right now I'm literally standing and looking down at a power line that's snaking over top of a tree that, as Ken was saying earlier, because of the wet conditions, this thing just laid down on the ground. Branches didn't break before it fell. It just laid down on the ground when the wind came through.
So did he describe, I don't know if you had talked to him or if you had talked to the woman who came home after the destruction of this particular home that we had just seen video of, clearly he was, I would imagine, in the basement.
Yes, he was in the basement area. We talked to a neighbor who said he got home just before the wind hit. He said they had about 3 seconds before the worst of it hit. He said it was then instantly quiet after that. So whatever happened, apparently, according to this neighbor, an eyewitness who lives next door, that whatever happened very quickly, and then it was done. As I'm talking to you right now, I'm walking behind 2 Minneapolis police officers who are going down the street and taking information from people and looking to see if anybody has anyone that they need to have checked on as a welfare check.
Yeah, that's another bit of good news that we've heard from several people, is that the sirens were going off. People were warned. This may have been slightly unexpected today as far as really having one of those hot days where you feel like there's going to be a storm, but the sirens went off before this happened. And Tim, are you hearing that from other people, that they felt like they were warned enough that they had time to get down to their basements?
You know, the young man that we spoke with didn't talk about sirens. I think that at that point, had sirens been going off, I don't even think he would have noticed that they were happening, because he said the intensity of the wind was coming up so quickly that he wasn't, I don't think he even was thinking of that. He was heading for the basement if there were sirens or if there were church bells. He was on his way down to safety at that moment.
Yes, sounds like a smart guy.
Well, it's when you, standing here, as we came down the block and we'd heard from people that were directing us here, they said if you want to take pictures, come down to this neighborhood. And as we got closer to it, it's really even unrecognizable as a home. It's a tangle of it looks like a lath and plaster old walls that are twisted up inside the house, and the rest of it looks as if it were demolished, by machinery.
The worst damage, the worst tornado damage that you have ever seen, that you've ever covered?
This particular area, what I'm looking at right now is the worst we've seen from this storm. Yeah, this is the worst.
Okay. Tim Chernow, thanks. We want to get to a live picture on the ground of people clearly getting out in there and doing some work, cutting those trees up, getting them out of the roads and pulling them through. Look at the standing water.
Wow. One thing we'd like to talk about with this is that there are some more thunder showers that are moving in. They're not severe, but there are some more thunder showers that are rolling in, and that's the activity that is going to hamper, as you said, Jess, insult to injury here. These people trying to get things cleaned up and cleared up. If we can take a look at radar real